All right, everyone. So let's do another garden update. We've been getting lots of rain, and it's been raining for much of the day, but now the sun has come out, so I've decided to film the garden. These eggplants have almost doubled in size since last week. You can see all these flowers just developing on these plants here. You can see right here. And some of these flowers are bigger than others, like this one over here. It's a nice sized flower. These are eggplants that have come from seed, which I collected last year. So I'm just waiting to see what type of eggplants these things will produce, because a few years ago, or really a couple of years ago, I planted a variety of different eggplants: Indian, Italian eggplants, Asian eggplants, and they cross-pollinated, and I collected the seed from some of those plants and planted them last year, and I got a variety of different types of eggplants. I got eggplants that came out long and thin, and I got eggplants that came out long and round. And so I collected seed from some of those plants, which cross-pollinated, and we'll see what types of eggplants we get this year. Some people are really obsessed with not allowing any sort of cross-pollination. This is why a lot of people, or some people, will just buy seed every single year because they want a particular type of eggplant or a particular type of tomato or pepper every single year. They think that the pepper or the fruit has to look the same every year, and so they don't want any sort of hybrids. They don't want anything that came as a result of cross-pollination. But I don't agree with that. I think one of the joys of gardening is to truly let nature take its course and see what type of diversity you can have in the garden. I have peppers here, Anaheims and habaneros. Got this giant green onion. Look how big this green onion got. Here I have sorrel, lots of sorrel growing here. And then here I have a giant sunflower. I'm actually growing these for food because sunflowers are actually related to artichokes, and I've heard that they have a texture similar to artichoke. So I'm actually going to be growing these sunflowers to eat them. Here are some okras. Again, these are okras that came from seed, which I planted, which I collected last year. I'm going to say that these are really a result of cross-pollination between red burgundy okra and just some kind of green okra, because last year I planted red burgundy okra, and I planted also green okra right nearby, and so they cross-pollinated, and I collected the seed, and so all these okras are red because they are a red burgundy okra, or they have the genetics of a red burgundy okra. Here's a mustard plant that I'm allowing just to go to seed. You can see this. Oh, look at that little bee. And I'm allowing this plant just to go to seed because I want this plant to spread its seed everywhere. So that way I can have edible weeds. I can have weeds that are actually mustard greens. Here I have this Swiss chard, which I don't really remember planting this, but it popped up out of the ground, so oh well. Just let it be, free food. I got celery here, dandelion greens growing here, lots of green onions. This green onion is already flowering. Just let things go to seed. Let things go to seed. The next year you'll see edible food popping up all over your backyard. Here I have a cucumber. This is a radish that I'm allowing to go to seed because I want to collect her seed so I can sow it next year, or in the fall really, which is really when radishes thrive. I have Swiss chard all over the place. Beautiful Swiss chard, some of which are already going to flower. And I'm going to allow these things just to go to seed and let the seed spread. That way I can have Swiss chard growing on its own. and it'll be completely acclimated to the climate, completely conditioned to the soil, and it will know exactly what to do, and it will thrive a lot better than chards that will grow from seed, which you buy from the store. But you can see some of these leaves are quite big. And there's different things that you can do with chard. A lot of people like to eat them raw, but you can do it with you can actually cook it like a stir fry in a wok with some minced pork or minced beef with oyster sauce and soy sauce. You can eat it with steamed rice or noodles. It's actually really good. I have a row of green onions here, and then on each side I have parsley growing. And these parsleys won't probably start to really become luscious until either late summer or in the fall, really, because parsley loves cool weather. And I have just mint growing all over the place. Love mint tea. I make mint tea almost at a weekly basis. Got more mint growing on the sides here. And have all these sunflowers coming up. And I want to use these for food. I have this hibiscus growing here, but it doesn't look too well. I'm just going to see what it does. It looks like it got some kind of a bacterial wilt or something, but they're still growing, so we'll see what they do. Have some tansy growing here. Lots of beautiful flowers growing. See all these flowers popping up. This one is quite nice to look at. Look at these ones over here. You have these ones over here. These have a nice rosy color to them. And moving on, lots of lavender, lots of tarragon. Tarragon is amazing. I just made a batch of tarragon kombucha, and it tastes amazing. It has a nice fennelly taste to it. Moving on, lots of lemon balm. Lots of lemon balm. Have some rosemary growing here. Bee balm over here. This is a great herb, especially when you use the flower for tea. When the flowers come up, that's where the real power is. More bee balm, bee balm. Have some of these weeds growing here, but they produce nice looking flowers and they attract lots of bees, so I don't really pull them out. But I did not plant these at all. These are completely wild flowers. Have two large sunflowers here. Lots of sage. More flowers. More bee balm. More sunflowers over here. Lots of sunflowers. Again, I did not plant these sunflowers. The chickens love eating sunflowers, and so when I spread the chicken manure around by taking the hay from the coop and putting it directly into the soil, sunflower seeds will remain in the hay and they will pop up. And so I'm just going to let them grow. I've never grown sunflowers before. This is the first time ever. And I've heard that you can braise them and bake them with some ricotta cheese, like an Italian recipe. And I've heard that they are similar to artichoke because they are a cousin of artichoke. Look how big these Swiss chards got. Just massive, especially with all the chicken manure that I've been putting in here, and well, the chicken manure that I did put in here, but just with the massive amounts of rain that we've been getting, these leaves got big. And these mustard seeds are almost ready. They're drying out. And once they dry up, I'm gonna make mustard sauce out of them. I won't get a lot, but hey, when you buy the real deal mustard from the grocery store, you don't get a lot either, because it actually takes a lot more work to make than the craft mustard, the standard craft mustard that you get at the store. And then in the midst of all the Swiss chard, I have this giant burdock plant that's growing. And I will be harvesting the burdock and drying it out, slicing it very thinly, drying it out, and then storing it for tea. This is a wild tomatillo plant. Again, this is the result of just allowing plants to die naturally in the land, go to seed, die, and allowing the seeds just to spread where they will. And here I have a tomatillo bush that I didn't even plant, and it's growing very healthy in the midst of a bunch of Swiss chard and burdock. So we'll see how this goes. Lots of Swiss chard. I have this very pretty looking flower here. Sunflower. The sunflower is developing well. All this burdock and Swiss chard everywhere. More flowers. And then here I have these tomatoes. I have this whole section just for tomatoes. And these are mainly celebrity tomatoes, which are very resistant to wilt and other diseases. And you can see they're growing over here. Tomato over here. Over here. And we'll see how these other ones are doing. Just the immense amounts of rain we've been getting really does help. Nothing can beat rain, nothing. And all these tomatoes. So these things are packing fruit. Nice cluster of tomatoes here. Nice clusters of tomatoes here as well. Let's see if I can show you guys. Right there, you can see them. So clusters are forming. And then you have these melons that are growing. These have doubled in size very quickly. Have another melon right there, and they will just simply grow on these trellises. Here I have a yaupon tree. This is yaupon tea. Yaupon is the only caffeinated plant native to North America. It is actually related to the yerba mate tea, which is native to Argentina. I have tried yaupon tea, but only store-bought, and it is good. It has a very good flavor to it. The flavor is actually better than, well, it's different, but it does have more of a nuttier taste than your standard black tea or green tea. It is very good flavor-wise. It does pack a good amount of caffeine, and it actually survives through just about anything. These trees can survive through snow, drought, does not require a lot of water, and it gives you caffeine. So it's just a huge benefit to the garden to have this. Here I have stevia, and these stevia plants are just, it's remarkable how much sugar these things can provide you. You just take a few of these sprigs and put them in your tea, and you have natural sugar. This is a natural source of sugar, and I've been using it all the time. Every time I boil tea, every time I brew tea, I always make sure to put some sprigs of stevia in them. And these are very cheap. I'm definitely going to allow some of these plants to flower, so that way I can take their seed and just regrow these plants, because they are truly remarkable. They are a natural source of sugar, much like sugarcane. They taste very sweet. It's really awesome. Here I have basil, lots of basil growing. And I have this rhubarb here. And these are all stevias. Then I have this lemongrass, which I've started to grow from a cutting. More flowers here. This bed is developing. Here I have cucumber, eggplant, I got a Anaheim chili, eggplant, cucumber, and I have this melon here which will grow onto this trellis. And then here I have a lemongrass. Here, these are all Victory tomatoes, or sorry, not Victory, Celebrity tomatoes. Like I said, these are resilient to wilt, and this is the first time that I've ever grown tomatoes seriously. Someone recommended that I grow Celebrity because he said that they produce a lot. But upon doing more research, I found out that not only do they produce a lot, but they're actually determinate tomatoes, which means you don't really have to prune them because they're each going to give you a limited amount of tomatoes. So you don't want to prune them, because if you prune out branches, then you prune out flowers and you will get less tomatoes. So it takes less work to get fruit out of these things. You just let them grow. You put a simple stake like this one on it. And I've heard that these Celebrity tomatoes were genetically engineered, or they were bred or cross-pollinated to resist wilt and diseases that are huge killers for tomatoes. So on this one, you can see flowers developing, and this one here has a good sized tomato on it already, and this one here as well. And you don't have to prune them. You don't have to prune them because they're going to grow to a certain size anyway, and they're going to give you a certain number of tomatoes. So you don't want to prune anything. You just maybe want to cut the bottom branches out. But again, these things are resistant to wilt, so what's the point? Here I have an eggplant and a melon and some more melons, and they will be growing on these trellises. Here I have cucumbers, which will be growing on these cages here. It's a cucumber. This is a mulberry tree that died during the winter, so I'm gonna have to get rid of it and plant something else there. Here I have some chamomile, rosemary. Here's a cucumber, more cucumbers. And here is just the side view of this garden part here. It's all Swiss chard, and it's growing very lusciously, and I really believe it's because of the chicken manure. And I've heard nothing but good things about chicken manure. I've heard that it's probably the best fertilizer that you can use, better than cow fertilizer. So before putting any seeds here, I made sure to put chicken manure, put a whole layer of hay from the coop, which is filled with chicken manure, and bam, it just explodes in growth. And then here I have these grapes. I've shown you guys these grapes before, but they are getting bigger. So that's pretty remarkable. First time growing grapes. I planted this grape last year, in March of last year. And it's now producing clusters. When I first bought this plant, it had one cluster on it already. And the cluster did develop into ripe fruit. And they tasted good. The only difference is that you can taste the seeds in these ones. You can actually feel the seeds in your mouth. And then here's just a whole bunch of parsley. And I'm just gonna allow these parsleys to go to flower. And that way I can have weeds for parsley. It's just gonna grow all over the place. And here's just a bunch of flowers, and some of them are flowers that we planted from seed, and a lot of these are just wild flowers. and they do attract bees. Here in this other part of the bed, I have a beet here, which I grew last fall, and I'm allowing it to grow. Hopefully it'll flower up and I can take the seed. And I have an eggplant here, eggplant here, eggplant here, an Anaheim chili over there, and have some green beans growing here, some burdock, ginormous burdock over here. And then these tomatoes. Let's see, are there any fruits on this one? Oh, wow. Look at that. Nice. Now I want to show you guys some other parts of the garden here. You can see, I like how this looks. All these flowers coming through this mesh. Looks nice. But here, I have a rose bush and more flowers. Here's just a whole bed that I dedicated to Swiss chard. And some of these chards have gotten decently big. Lots and lots of chard. I've had to put this mesh in because the chickens would absolutely just devour everything. So yeah, that's the garden for now. I'll see you guys later. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.